Oh, yeah. I thought maybe you'd want to kick the ball around. Go down to the park, get some fresh air or something. Oh! I think you accidentally threw it out into the front yard, but I'll get it. Meet me out here. We can play a quick...
Lots of 80s references, pop culture references that is, a reference or two to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the movie side of things, and a little comic book reference that leads to one of those two MCU references. Hello and welcome back guys to another one of my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. videos and my review of the 7th episode of the 7th and final season of the series, otherwise titled The Totally Excellent Adventures of Mack and the D. Okay, starting with the title of the episode, The Totally Excellent Adventures of Mack and the D. That's both an obvious indication of the content of the episode and a reference to the 80s movie with a similar name, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a comedic movie too, by the way, like this episode was, and one that did as well use time travel as a plot device to advance its comedic plot. Now, as expected, and this is really the first thing I've mentioned on this video, a ton of pop culture references on this episode, most of them, if not all of them, referring to the period of the 80s. A really funny episode there, enjoyed every little bit of it. I know a lot of people are gonna talk, yeah, this is a filler. It's partially a filler, not totally a filler. I mean, in the end, it kinda gave us an advancement to the main story, the Chronicoms story, and their animosity with S.H.I.E.L.D. That story is not over yet, it's still gonna continue over the course of the next few episodes. Cybil is still out there, and she's still planning to attack S.H.I.E.L.D. and try to cull them out in order to end their danger on the Chronicom plans. However though, even with the filler part of the episode, if there's a series that manages to do a filler and do it well, it's definitely Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's what they did on this episode. So the episode is Deke and Mack Centric, but that did not really negate other appearances. May makes it right off the bat. She makes it another time through the episode. You know, she's listening to that entire story, that entire report made by Deke about the incidents in 1982 and 1983. All that went down with both him and Mack. But that's not just it, there are other characters appearing closer to the end of the episode. Gotta talk about that in a moment. But the first thing though that we do see on this episode, the first really interesting thing about all of this is those good old slow computers and the floppy disk drives. These are the good old days. I mean, not so good now when you look at the computers that we have, but back then that stuff was really good and really fast. But alright though, let's talk about this Russel guy. Russel is a Russel Feldman, honestly, had to research this one, but in the 616 continuity, he's a member of the Anti-Registration Underground, so basically resisting the Superhuman Registration Act. So kind of like a reference to many things here. You've got the impact of the act on season 4 of the series, you've got Captain America Civil War, and of course the character itself on the pages of the comics, even though very minor and only seems to have appeared on the pages of the source material on the one issue. But another thing though about Russel is he hits yes right away when he gets that weird message on the old computer. Like this guy has never watched a movie about how this goes down and ends for everyone involved. It's pretty bad really what he does over there. But the other thing about Cybil's first contact with Russel is it is yet another reference to another 80s movie. We're talking War Games over here. That's the way that Joshua communicated with the character portrayed by Matthew Broderick on that movie. Okay, another thing over here is that 1980s computer title card. Such a cheap title card to create, by the way, yet so representative of the time period, so representative of the story within this episode, and it does go to prove that sometimes less is actually more. But another thing about Cybil over here is that she's still out there, she's still planning to advance her original plans, and that answers the question from last week's episode. A lot of people have been asking it, you know, how they still time jumped after the Chronicoms have been defeated, even though it has been indicated that this is tied to the Chronicoms. I think the answer is simple, they are still out there, so the time jumps are still possible. But moving on though, Cybil asks Russel to build her a body, and him working on it. That's what we watch on this episode. That's very 1985's weird science. We've got Mack the Beard's the depression due to a loss of someone he cared for, the sinking in his armchair there, the longer than his usual beard as well. All of that stuff combined is really Thor in Avengers Endgame. Well, without the extremely big belly there. But let us though talk about Deke for a little bit. Deke's doing his thing again from last season. You know, there he stole S.H.I.E.L.D. technology to get his company up and running. Over here, he is stealing 80s songs and claiming that he wrote them himself. Don't Forget About Me from the Breakfast Club. That was the highlight of all of those songs, even though the Bangles song Walk Like an Egyptian was referenced or name-dropped later on in the events of the episode by the Jiayings as one of those songs that he claimed he wrote himself. But another reference here though is Deke's outfit during his performance. That was very Mike Reno, lead singer for the 80s band Loverboy. The way that Deke introduces his team to Mack, that was very A-Team style introduction and subtitles. None of the names ring a bell though, but the Jiayings did feel akin to the Koenigs. At the very least, that's what I thought or what I felt that was supposed to be a reference to. But okay, we've got the Mack's Headroom version of Coulson trapped in a television with the same background even. That kind of repeats again at the very end with Cybil instead of Coulson. Cybil creates her new army as Coulson expected. She kills Russel, a reminder of how horror used to be less about story and less about, actual horror, but rather about gore in the 80s. There are still movies of the kind as well, but there are definitely the other, more watchable kind of horror now. The way the robots are built there has them looking quite close to number 5 on Short Circuit. Mack even refers to one of them as Short Circuit later on. There's one pulsating red eye as well, that's very Cylons out of the original Battlestar Galactica. Deke is very Top Gun on that one scene, the way he's dressed, the sunglasses, the whole 9 yards really. I mean, for a moment there, I even thought, okay, you know what, they made Deke into some kind of Tom Cruise look-alike for that one scene. But alright though, we've got another reference to another season of the series, season 6, because Deke over here recreates Remorith Rumble from the last season, the VR game. Except this time around it is real and it is all using paintball guns. Same Deke, different decade. But alright, all the comedy and the references on this episode aside, even though we're going to be talking more references as we go, the episode is not really free of progressing the core storyline. The Chronicoms are back in their new robotic bodies. They're ready to rain hellfire on Deke and his squad, and of course Mack in the process. And all of that starts with yet another gory scene representative of that 80s horror style. Moontrap does come to mind considering how the robotic arms are designed on this episode. But still on references though, especially to previous seasons and pop culture references, Mack's not again with a robot in a shield base. That's a reference to both Chronicoms on last week's episode, taking over a lot of people in the lighthouse, a reference to the Chronicoms coming back in general when he thought they were gone or they were probably gone, but possibly as well, it is a reference to every reaction that he had on Season 4 to the existence of both Ada and the LMDs. Mackdaddy over here, as Deke refers to him on this episode, was not really a big fan of all that stuff, anything robotic really. But okay though, Mack gets ready for battle, suits up, and hello Rambo, yet another 80s reference, the way he suits up. I gotta say, I love how there is finally some kind of a common ground between these two, Mack and Deke. In this case, it's the loss of their parents. The two of them do have that one in common. A total of almost 2 years have passed, that's when the Zephyr jumped to, so sometime in late 1983 to mid or late 1984. It all depends on when exactly they left Deke and Mack in 1982, and that part was never really made all that clear. Now May and Yo-Yo are left behind with the Quinjet and they are tasked with finding their missing team members, aka Deke and Mack. They're supposed to rendezvous with the Zephyr in 27 days. So the Zephyr is about to make another time jump. That time jump is going to be to 27 days later, and that's when they could meet again. These guys are all staying for 27 more days in this time period. But one final thing though before we jump to the stinger of the episode is that I love the interaction between May and Coulson about his hard drive being their most important asset. Not sure that pun was intended, or at least partially intended, but honestly though, it did actually feel like it was intended. But let us though move on to the stinger of the episode. Now from the battle within the lighthouse we know that one robot escaped with the time stream drive, made it to the new Chronicom ally. A lot of people kept arguing that he could not take Daisy's powers, that he was actually dead, told you that he was alive. It did not make sense to me that such a possibly good story would end up being wasted, like a one and done. Talking about Nathaniel Malick here. I mean, you've got an evil Quake out there, you've got our Quake, we're not sure if she's lost her powers, a lot of people are claiming so, but we're gonna find out on next week's episode, maybe even on the one that follows, because I don't see any hint of Quake on next week's trailer. Not gonna spoil the trailer over here, but all I'm gonna say is, we're getting one surprise character on next week's episode, a returning character that some of us have wanted to see on this season. Now last week, and I think even the week before, I've talked about that character. I've said that they're gonna be back this season, or at least I think they're gonna be back this season. So I'm gonna end this video by talking about those other characters that I think could make an appearance this season. I think that Grant Ward could make an appearance this season. I think that Ada could make an appearance this season. Some way, some shape, some form, she could actually make that kind of appearance. There's also Trip. I'm thinking Trip could make an appearance here. Now the characters that I wish I could see, but I'm not sure I'm gonna see, I don't think we're gonna see this season, happen to be Bobby and Hunter. But that though is just out of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm hoping other characters out of the greater MCU, you know, the movie side of things, make an appearance this season. The two names that do come to mind over here happen to be Nick Fury and Maria Hill. I don't think Nick Fury is gonna make it, but Maria Hill is still a possibility. But that said though, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Let me know what you think is going to be happening on next week's episode, you know, having watched the trailer and whatnot. Let me know if you think that Nathaniel Malick is going to be the major villain of the season. I'm starting to think that. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, thank you so much for tuning in to this review, stay safe, and have a great day.